Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us today. Daniel Estulin, and welcome to our English language internet show called The World at Large. Now, Trump has just been sworn in as the 47th president of the United States of America. Donald Trump, he is the ultimate consummate businessman. He loves deals. And a deal is when somebody or everyone gets something. I get something, you get something, somebody else gets something. Everybody's happy. And so to hold a service on the Temple Mount, Trump needs the Pope. And the Pope needs to be given something in return. And moreover, Trump claims to be higher than the Pope. And so Trump will offer the Pope the Hagia Sophia to hold a joint service with the Eastern churches. In fact, such a conversation between the ecumenical patriarch and the Pope have already been made public. And thereby giving away through ritual power over all of the Eastern churches that come to worship. But there is a problem because the Hagia Sophia is in Istanbul and Erdogan converted it into a mosque. And so therefore, for Erdogan to give up Hagia Sophia, Trump will offer him Syria, where the Kurds are seriously interfering with the neo-Ottoman project. And the Kurds are trained and supported by the Israeli intelligence. And Trump said he would put pressure on Israel. And so politics is now turning into a Game of Thrones. And of course, then there is Russia. For the Russia not to interfere, Trump will give it a piece of Ukraine and perhaps the right to trade through the waters of the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea. Only the patriarch will come to Sophia and spiritually submit to the Pope, and the Pope will submit to Donald Trump. Now, Putin might call it a victory, but in fact, it's going to be a Pyrrhic victory because Putin or Russia is, yes, maybe, perhaps, can call it a military victory, but a total meta-political defeat. And so that's on the one hand. On the other hand, the key question is, who is Donald Trump? What about his conservative buddies? And what does all of this have to do with artificial intelligence? Oh, and let's not forget, I've talked about this before, that Trump will absolutely be interfered with, first of all, by the English through Islam. So if you think of Trump as the czar or the king, his position on the negotiation is simple. And Tucker Carlson, good old Tucker Carlson, he came to scout it out. Now, who is Tucker Carlson? Well, he's a graduate of the elite Trinity College, sponsored by the CIA. He's also the son of the CIA agent Richard Carlson, the director of the Voice of America, who visited Moscow back in the 1990s, when, as Tucker Carlson said, there was no electricity there. Now, Tucker Carlson was adopted by Richard's second wife, the daughter of the oligarch Swanson, a frozen food manufacturer billionaire. Now, according to his real mother, Tucker Carlson is really Tucker McNear. And in his interview, remember his interview with Putin. Now, Putin several times gave unambiguous hints to Carlson. And when Tucker Carlson asked, who blew up the Nord Stream, Putin pointed to Carlson, smiled and said, "You blew up the Nord Stream," meaning not Carlson, but the CIA. Basically saying how Carlson, who wanted to work for the CIA, and Putin in fact said that, after graduating from Trinity College, but according to the official version, he was not taken for using marijuana. And of course, Putin knew this and he said so publicly. And therefore, the view that Putin is waiting for Trump to win is nonsense. These are competitors. And we should not forget also about the artistic symbolism associated with Donald Trump. For example, the film The Dark Knight, where the Trump Tower building in New York was used for Batman's headquarters, Wayne Enterprise. And so think about this. What's a bat? A bat is a traditional symbol of hidden organizations, special forces, intelligence and counterintelligence agencies. And so the image of a billionaire who is in charge of a production of advanced special equipment and the military-industrial complex is an image of what? Of an illiberal elite of the United States. What are we talking about? We are talking about the descendants of the Illuminati. Oh, by the way, Trump's grandfather, who headed indirectly about 15 technical institutes, including Massachusetts Institute of Technology, was involved in, among many other things, the development of radars like bats, for example, with their advanced own radar systems. And the fact that Bruce Wayne learned everything in Tibet where the Third Reich expeditions went, well, that's a completely separate conversation for another day. And so in this regard, the open, quote-unquote, serious conversation between intelligence colonel Vladimir Putin and the intelligence officer Tucker Carlson is very interesting if you understand what they're actually talking about in a parallel world of wink, wink, hint, hint. There's something else you need to understand, that Tucker Carlson acted as a representative of the Black International in a black and gold tie. Now, why do I say this? You see, Donald Trump is simply a representative of a German family that is related to the Scots, because Trump is naturally from the MacLeod clan. By the way, there's also a movie about them. And we must remember that the Anglos and the Saxons, these are Germanic tribes. And the position of Putin, voiced allegorically, Ukraine and the regime will be cleared by force, and we are ready to hand over the Hungarian territories. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. But you see, the stumbling block in all of this is denazification. The position of Carlson, who probably has descendants of the Third Reich elite amongst his relatives or friends, is the following. It was a long time ago, he said so in the interview. The regime was defeated. And Putin is talking nonsense. And Putin's position takes into account the fact that the Reich remains, albeit through Azov battalion and company. Now, a separate, unnoticed, and undiscussed nuance was Carlson's question: what do you think, Mr. President, about the AI empire? In other words, the empire of artificial intelligence. And this is a key question. The United States backstage is formed on Hegelian dialectic, Hegelian ideas. That is, the world spirit, through overcoming contradictions, becomes aware of itself and the entire world. And so the result of the evolution of the world spirit will be the prince of this world existing, in other words, manifesting his being in the world of a man through artificial intelligence. And on this account, there are fresh measurements of the work of ChatGPT, for example, showing that the manifested work of the neural network is a projection of a more complex network existing elsewhere. And so Putin answered, well, who will stop Mr. Musk if he decides to implant a chip in his head? And so the formation of the new world is underway, and different projects should have not only a different vision of the future, by that mean global projects, but also a key resource in order to remain in the game. And our conservative friends, quote unquote, in the United States are betting on artificial intelligence. And finally, the specificity of the current moment is the concern of the newly elected U.S. President Donald Trump about the issue of war and peace in the Ukrainian theater of military operations. And this issue will be the topic of the meeting soon to come between Trump and Putin, preparations for which are in full swing. And so the specificity of Trump's approach to international affairs is, again, his experience of solving problems by concluding a deal. He is a deal maker. He is a businessman. And the instrument for the deal in Trump's hands are sanctions, the lifting of which can be exchanged for concessions from Putin. Now, the importance of sanctions that are strangling the economy of the corporate state of New Russia. We're not a socialist country. We're not a dictatorship. We're not a communist country. We're a quintessential capitalist country. A corporate state of New Russia is well understood and justified to Putin by the heads of Rosneft, Gazprom, etc., etc. We're talking about the biggest corporations in the world. And so the American and Western sanctions on the energy sector of the Russian Federation, against the latest, blocking exports by banning 183 tankers of the shadow fleet from being accepted in ports, cannot be bypassed by import substitution, refusal to price and pay for the hydrocarbons in US dollars. And this is the reason for the weakening of the ruble, the rise in consumer prices, the imminent depletion of foreign exchange reserves, the threat of hyperinflation, and not to forget the growing problems with financing military operations and the entire military economy. Politics is a concentrated expression of economics. Remember that phrase. It's quite obvious that the bargaining, in other words, lifting sanctions in exchange for removing the threat of military use of Sarmate, Poseidone, Areshnik on Paris, Rome, London, Washington, etc., it's not realistic because it is removed by the counter threat of a massive nuclear strike on Moscow. And so what Russia can offer the United States of America and the NATO alliance specifically is the cessation of the offensive of the Russian armed forces and division of Ukraine in favor of the behind-the-scenes project of the Sons of the Covenant, in other words, B'nai B'rith, and the creation of the new Khazaria for the second exodus of Jews before the coming of Messiah. And so in this deal, it's possible to exchange the areas, for example, of the Kursk region of the Russian Federation occupied today by the armed forces of Ukraine and international recognition of the borders of the new territories of Donbass, Novorossiya, the Republic of Crimea, accepted into the Russian Federation. In other words, the Russian diplomacy in negotiations on a peaceful end to the conflict in the Ukrainian theater of military operations will be forced to fight for the lifting of sanctions because, again, the economy of Rosneft and other corporations is a priority. And the deal with the United States of America will consist in the fact that the lifting of American sanctions will be exchanged for the withdrawal of the Russian Federation from the liberated quote-unquote territories, quote-unquote. And so this is a very bad deal for Russia. This obscene peace will soon need to be reformatted by assembling a number of regions of the former USSR, including the regions of southeast Ukraine, which is the Republic of Crimea, Lugansk, Donetsk People's Republic, Novorossiya, into a new union of free sovereign republics, in other words, Soviet Union too. Unfortunately, until Russia declares its own ideology, it can't hope for anything better. I'm Daniel Estulin. Thanks for joining us again. Join us, sign up to our free channel on YouTube, or if you want more exclusive private information, go to our site, estulin.media, and sign up and become a subscriber. Thanks again. Until tomorrow, goodbye.